The desert floor is cold and still. Concrete revetments cast long shadows under floodlights. Then 11 silhouettes, angular, impossible, swallowed by radar, roll onto the tarmac. The world just changed. The sensors caught it before any human eye could process the scale. Chinese commercial satellite imagery released by the private intelligence firm Mizar Vision confirmed what military analysts had suspected for 72 hours. 11 F-22 Raptor 5th-generation stealth fighters, assigned to the 1st Fighter Wing out of Joint Base Langley Eustis, Virginia, had touched down at Ovda Air Base in the southern Negev 40 kilometers north of Eilat, 1,112 miles from the western edge of Iranian airspace. This was not a training rotation. This was not a scheduled exercise. The aircraft were armed, sustained by dedicated ground crews, flanked by KC-46 Pegasus and KC-135 Stratotanker aerial refueling assets, staged at Ben Gurion International Airport near Tel Aviv within a 24-hour window. At least 8 additional KC-46s landed at Ben Gurion. The tanker surge was unambiguous. The Pentagon said nothing. U.S. Central Command declined to comment. The silence confirmed everything. At 3:22 hours, the strike package was already assembled on paper, and perhaps not only on paper. Mission planners at CENTCOM's Forward Operations Cell had been running the numbers for weeks. The operational geometry was precise and unforgiving. Iran's western border sat approximately 1,800 kilometers from Ovda. The F-22 Raptor's unrefueled combat radius reached 529 miles, insufficient for a direct penetration mission. But with aerial refueling support from the staged KC-46 fleet, that constraint evaporated. The battlespace geometry transformed entirely. The strike package, as modeled, required 4 discrete elements operating in choreographed sequence. Element 1. F-22 Raptors conducting suppression of enemy air defenses, designated SEAD. Element 2. F-35, a Lightning II aircraft, approximately 30 deployed to a forward operating location outside Israel, providing low observable strike, coordination, and electronic emissions collection. Element 3. IA-18G Growler electronic warfare platforms assigned to jam and blind Iranian ground-based radar networks. Element 4. The lethal package, the 2 Spirit stealth bombers delivering GBU-57, massive ordnance penetrators against hardened subsurface infrastructure. The F-22 was the first blade through the door. At 3:47 hours, the simulated launch order cascaded through the command net. 11 Raptors lifted from Ovda's primary runway within a 9-minute window. The aircraft carried no external stores. Every weapon system nested inside internal bays, preserving the platform's 0.001 square meter radar cross-section. Each jet carried 6 AIM-1, 2 OD advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, and 2 AIM-9X Block 2 Sidewinder short-range missiles in air superiority configuration. Selected airframes carried 2 1,000-pound GBU-32 Joint Direct Attack munitions for hard target prosecution, weapons released at standoff range. Guided to within 3 meters of their designated coordinates, the aircraft climbed through 35,000 feet and vanished from commercial radar feeds within 4 minutes. Supercruise engaged. No afterburner. No heat bloom. No acoustic signature beyond the desert wind. At 4:03 hours, the refueling rendezvous occurred over Saudi airspace. Not confirmed, not denied, but operationally necessary. 2 KC-46 Pegasus tankers transferred fuel in a rolling contact operation, conducted in near-total emission silence. The Raptors absorbed 12,000 pounds of JP-8, each, and continued east. Speed, Mach 1.5. Altitude, 42,000 feet. Iranian radar coverage, anchored by Russian-supplied S-300 PM U-2 batteries and the domestically developed Bavar 373 long-range surface-to-air missile system detected nothing. That was the point. At 4:31 hours, the forward element crossed into contested airspace. Iranian integrated air defense system operators at sites near Isfahan and Tabriz registered anomalous electromagnetic shadows, brief, fragmented returns that no algorithm could confidently classify as aircraft. The S-300PMU-2 fire control radars illuminated. They swept. They found nothing. The Raptors were already inside the engagement envelopes of 3 separate Iranian SAM batteries, and not one system had a firing solution. At 4:44 hours, the first AIM-120D came off the rail. Internal bay doors cycled open, 0.3 seconds of exposure. The missile dropped clean, motor ignited, guidance locked. The target, an Iranian Air Force F-14 Tomcat, one of 4 legacy fighters, scrambled from Ovda Air Base when radar operators reported the anomalous returns. The F-14 crew never acquired the Raptor on radar. Their RIO called a contact, uncertain. Probable track. Then nothing. Impact. The F-14 disintegrated at 28,000 feet. 3 seconds later, a second AIM-120D accounted for a second Tomcat attempting a defensive break. The sky did not erupt yet. The sky was still silent. That was the most dangerous part. At 4:52 hours, the battlespace collapsed inward with velocity that no doctrine had fully anticipated. 8 minutes of controlled, invisible dominance ended as the EA-18G Growlers, orbiting 90 nautical miles to the west over the Arabian Gulf, opened their NALQ-99 jamming pods at full radiated power. The electromagnetic environment across western Iran became catastrophic. Iranian Air Defense Command nets fragmented, voice communications degraded. Data links dropped off frequency. In the chaos, the Bavar 373 battery commanders at 3 hardened sites attempted autonomous engagement. Missiles launched. 17 surface-to-air missiles rose from their canisters and accelerated toward radar returns that no longer corresponded to anything real. Ghost signals. Electromagnetic deceptions injected by the Growler fleet. The Raptors did not flinch. At 4:55 hours, 2 F-22s prosecuted the first ground-based radar site, GBU-32 weapons away. Impact in 11 seconds. The NMPQ-64 Sentinel equivalent fire control antenna vaporized. The adjacent command vehicle shattered under secondary fragmentation. 1 battery offline. At 4:57 hours, a second battery went dark. 18 seconds elapsed between weapons release and confirmed destruction. The tactical action officers monitoring the engagement in real time registered the kill with a single word on the communications net. Confirmed. At 4:59 hours, the Raptors reached the outer edge of their assigned engagement envelope over the Zagros Mountains. The B-2 Spirit bombers, 2 aircraft inbound from Diego Garcia, each carrying 2 GBU-57 penetrators, crossed the Iranian border at 50,000 feet. The Raptors provided terminal air defense escort. The sky over the approach corridor was clean. Iranian fighter response neutralized. SAM coverage degraded across 4 sectors. The corridor was open. What followed in the next 14 minutes was not a skirmish. It was the systematic prosecution of hardened, deeply buried infrastructure by weapons designed for exactly this purpose. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, minus 30,000 pounds, hardened penetrating case, delayed action fuse does not destroy a facility. It removes it from the inventory of functional architecture permanently. 4 separate aim points, 4 separate impacts. Simultaneous detonations on the second pair. Time to collapse sequential blast protection doors before they could cycle closed. 12 minutes of decisive engagement. Then silence, 27 minutes after the initial refueling contact. The Raptors turned west at supercruise and began the transit back toward the refueling track. 0 aircraft lost. 0 aircrew casualties. 2 Iranian air defense batteries confirmed. Destroyed. 4 Iranian interceptors, 2 F-14 Tomcats, 1 MiG-29 Fulcrum, 1 F-4E Phantom, removed from the Iranian order of battle within the same engagement window. The Growler electronic warfare effort had achieved complete radar suppression across a 240 nautical mile corridor for 19 continuous minutes. No Iranian SAM achieved a valid track-while scan solution against any U.S. platform throughout. The engagement, recovery operations at Ovda proceeded without incident. Aircraft landed sequentially between 7:14 and 7:31 hours. Ground crews conducted post-flight inspections. Weapons bays were empty. The tarmac smelled of hot metal and residual JP-8. No press release. No announcement. No flag-draped ceremony. The aircraft simply landed, and the desert fell quiet again. The tactical lessons were immediate, and they confirmed what American planners had engineered into the F-22 program since its first operational deployment. The Raptor's low observable signature does not simply reduce detection probability. It eliminates the Iranian integrated air defense system's ability to build a coherent air picture across a contested corridor. Without an air picture, a surface-to-air missile battery is not a weapon system. It is expensive scrap metal pointed at empty sky. Strategic ramifications cascaded outward within hours of the simulated engagement's conclusion. Iran's nuclear calculus, the assumption that its hardened facilities were unreachable by any conventional strike package, had been operationally disproven not by the bombers, but by the aircraft that cleared the path. The F-22 did not carry the penetrating weapon. The F-22 guaranteed that the penetrating weapon arrived. That distinction is doctrinal. It is also absolute. The forward deployment to Ovda represented more than a repositioning of airframes. It represented a fundamental compression of decision-to-strike timelines. From Ovda, the F-22 fleet reaches the western border of Iranian airspace in under 90 minutes at supercruise, refueling completed, weapons armed. From Langley or Lakenheath, that timeline extended to many hours of transit and coordination. The compression of that window, from strategic deliberation to tactical execution, is what deterrence looks like at its sharpest edge. Can one reasonably ask whether the deployment changes the diplomatic equation? Yes, it changes it completely. Tehran's negotiating posture at the Geneva talks shifted measurably within 48 hours of the satellite imagery becoming public. Iranian state media condemned the deployment as provocative escalation. That language, aggressive in tone, absent in concrete military response, was itself a signal. It was the language of a regime that understood the correlation of forces had moved against them. This engagement fundamentally reshaped the regional security architecture across 3 distinct dimensions. First, it validated Israel as a forward operational platform for U.S. fifth-generation air power, a concept advocated by JINSA analysts for more than a year and now proven in the physical presence of Raptors on Israeli concrete. Second, it demonstrated that the U.S. Air Force tanker architecture, KC-46 forward staging at Ben Gurion, KC-135 assets distributed across the theater, could sustain continuous high-intensity strike operations without reliance on politically constrained Gulf basing agreements. Third, and most consequentially, it communicated a message that no diplomatic communique can deliver with equivalent clarity. The United States has positioned the instruments of decisive military force within striking distance of every meaningful target inside Iran, and those instruments are already on the ground. The president said he preferred a deal. He also said that sometimes you have to act. Both statements are now backed by 11 combat-ready F-22 Raptors on the Negev tarmac. In 11 aircraft. The United States redrew the operational map of the Middle East. From Ovda Air Base, Iranian airspace is not a destination requiring extensive planning. It is 90 minutes away at supercruise. The F-22 does not negotiate. It does not threaten. It simply arrives, invisible, precise, and inevitable. Deterrence, at its most credible, requires no words at all.